Hi there, and welcome back to Haunting Vales. Today we bring you a chilling new Hercule Poirot case, the Black Library. Within the walls of an ancient estate lies a vast library where secrets are hidden between the pages, and danger waits in silence. When murder strikes, Poirot must rely on his little gray cells to uncover the truth. Chapter 1. The Silent Invitation. The invitation arrived not by the ordinary means of post, but slipped beneath the door of Poirot's modest yet meticulously ordered London flat, as though carried by invisible hands that refused the sight of others. On that particular October morning, the city outside was wrapped in a dense blanket of fog, the sort of fog that smothers the lamps, makes the streets whisper with unseen footsteps, and compels Londoners to draw their coats tighter, as if protecting themselves not merely from the chill, but from the strange mood the mist carried with it. Poirot, seated at his small table with a perfect cup of chocolate and a brioche, noticed it at once. A pale envelope, thick in quality, edged in black, sealed with crimson wax upon which an emblem had been pressed. The emblem was not familiar. A raven perched upon a stack of books, its wings outstretched as though mid-flight. Poirot, his delicate fingers always exact, lifted the envelope and studied it. "Curious, most curious," he murmured in his thick Belgian accent, raising one arched eyebrow. Hastings, who had arrived moments earlier and was attempting to warm himself by the fire, glanced over. "Looks ominous, that does," he said, mustache twitching, like something out of one of those Gothic novels. Poirot smiled faintly, slid a silver letter opener beneath the seal, and unfolded the card within. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate, yet faintly unsettling in its precision. "Monsieur Poirot, you are cordially invited to the estate of Lord Alastair Harwood to attend a private gathering within the Black Library. Matters of grave importance will be disclosed. Your presence is not merely requested, but required. Midnight, October 14th. There was no further detail, no sender's mark beyond the same Raven Inn books, crest etched in ink at the bottom. But alongside the card was a folded slip of vellum, bearing a hand-drawn map of Kent's countryside, with a point marked in black ink. Hastings frowned deeply, rising from the hearth. "Required," it says. That sounds dashed imperious, if you ask me. Why on earth should you be summoned like that in the middle of the night? And in some blasted library, no less. Poirot's eyes twinkled as he gently tapped the envelope against his palm. "My dear Hastings, there is something theatrical in this. And Hercule Poirot, he understands the theater of crime. When a man of wealth and secrecy summons at midnight, with so strange an emblem and so curious a tone, it suggests a stage is prepared. A stage, perhaps, for murder." Hastings shifted uncomfortably. "Oh, come now, Poirot. You don't mean to say you expect a murder simply because some eccentric noble sends you an odd invitation?" Poirot inclined his head. Non. I expect nothing, but I prepare myself for everything." He rose, adjusted his tie, and placed the card precisely upon the mantelpiece, aligned at a perfect angle. "We will go, Hastings. For what is hidden behind such dramatic gestures? That is where one finds the most interesting of truths." The days that followed passed quickly, and as October 14th arrived, the city seemed reluctant to release them. Their hired motor car rattled away from London into the countryside, the lamps fading behind them, the roads narrowing to dark lanes flanked by bare trees that scratched at the sky like skeletal fingers. Their driver, a wiry man with a long face, spoke little until at last, as the air grew thicker with fog, he muttered, "Harwood Estate, is it? Best you be careful, gentlemen. Folks say strange things about that place. Been locked up for years it has, and when folk go near, they swear the air itself grows heavy. Some say books that ought not to exist sit on those shelves. Books that change a man if he reads too long." Hastings snorted uneasily, but Poirot merely tilted his head. "Superstitions, mon ami chauffeur. But every superstition," he added softly, "is built upon a seed of truth." The iron gates of Harwood Manor loomed before them, twisting high into the mist, their black bars curled in grotesque shapes. As they opened with a creak that seemed to echo across the grounds, the manor revealed itself, a Gothic sprawl of stone, ivy clutching at its walls, its countless windows reflecting no light. The house seemed less built than grown, as though it had sprung from the earth itself, ancient and unyielding. A butler awaited them upon the steps, tall, pale, with eyes that betrayed nothing. "Monsieur Poirot." "Captain Hastings," he intoned, his voice flat and dry. "Lord Harwood welcomes you. Please follow." They entered halls lined with portraits whose painted eyes seemed to follow them, long corridors where the air smelled faintly of wax and old dust. The silence of the place was oppressive, as though the walls themselves held their breath. At last, heavy doors opened, carved with unfamiliar sigils and guarded by two statues of ravens wrought in iron. The butler gestured. The black library. The room beyond was cavernous. Its shelves stretched impossibly high, as though no human ladder could reach them. Candles flickered, throwing shadows that danced upon the bindings of thousands of volumes. Leather, vellum, parchment, some cracked and brittle with age, others strangely pristine, as though untouched by time. The guests had already assembled. Around a long oak table sat a curious mix. Sir Reginald Colfax, a judge known for his iron severity. Lady Evelyn March, a widow whose fortune was matched only by the cloud of scandal about her. Professor Edmund Vale, an antiquarian whose obsession with rare manuscripts was the subject of gossip in academic circles, and a handful of others, each with eyes that flicked nervously about the room as if the shelves themselves were listening. At the head stood Lord Alastair Harwood, tall, skeletal, his black suit hanging loosely upon him like a shroud. His eyes burned with an unsettling intensity, and when he spoke, it was with a voice both commanding and brittle, like glass on the verge of cracking. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, "I thank you for answering my call. Tonight you stand within the Black Library, a place that holds knowledge forbidden, histories erased, and truths men have killed to bury. But the library demands cost. It has claimed before. It will claim again." Poirot bowed politely, concealing his intrigue. "You speak, my lord, of knowledge as though it breathes." Harwood's lips curled faintly. "Perhaps it does. But tonight, it is not knowledge alone that concerns us. It is the safety of what lies here. One among us has come with intentions most foul. There's a thief, perhaps even a murderer, and you, Monsieur Poirot, are here to uncover them before the library itself exacts its price." A murmur rippled among the guests, eyes darting, whispers spilling like nervous birds. Hastings muttered under his breath, "Dash it, Poirot, this feels like a play, and we just stepped on stage without knowing our lines." Poirot's gaze drifted along the circle of faces, noting every twitch, every flicker of unease. He placed his hands neatly together, his voice calm but edged with precision. "Then let the play begin, mon ami." For Hercule Poirot is most adept at reading the script that lies beneath the surface. And so, beneath the towering shelves of forgotten lore, with the candles flickering and the fog pressing against the windows like unseen hands, the stage was indeed set. A library of secrets, a host of uneasy souls, a summons shrouded in menace. And Poirot, stepping carefully into the theater of shadows, knew instinctively that before dawn broke, a crime would be written into these pages. Chapter 2: Whispers Among the Shelves. The atmosphere inside the Black Library grew heavier the longer Poirot and Hastings remained within its vaulted chamber. The candles hissed faintly as though protesting against the damp air, and the shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, climbing higher up the shelves where thousands of volumes lay, their spines unmarked by dust, their titles vanishing into languages both known and forgotten. It was not simply a room, Hastings thought uneasily. It was a place alive, as if the books themselves held breath, waiting, watching. Lord Harwood's proclamation, that one among them was a thief or worse, had fallen into the silence like a stone in a pond, its ripples visible in the strained faces of those seated at the long table. Lady Evelyn March lifted her veil slightly, revealing pale lips pressed tightly together as if to keep some terrible knowledge from spilling out. Sir Reginald cleared his throat with the sound of iron grating upon stone, his rigid posture unchanged though his eyes betrayed discomfort. Professor Vale's fingers twitched toward his spectacles as though adjusting them might help him make sense of a reality he had longed for yet now dreaded. Poirot's eyes, always alert, wandered across the shelves, then back to the guests. His mind already catalogued their reactions, weighing which among them seemed truly startled, which feigned surprise, and which bore the quiet air of the guilty who fear discovery. Yet he made no declaration, no movement to press them. Instead, he folded his hands across his immaculate waistcoat and spoke in a tone calm and even, a voice that cut through the heavy silence without disturbing it. Messrs. Et Mesdames, it is never wise to accuse without first understanding. Perhaps Lord Harwood will explain to us, with the clarity that is owed, what precisely is believed to have been stolen, or what danger lies before us. Lord Harwood's gaze flickered toward Poirot, then drifted upward toward the shelves as if the very walls were listening. "There are books here," he said slowly, his voice low, "that should not exist. Works seized by kings, condemned by churches, burned in the squares of Europe, yet preserved here in secrecy. Among them are manuscripts of immeasurable value, not merely in gold, but in knowledge. And knowledge, Monsieur Poirot, can be the most dangerous possession of all. In recent months, I have come to suspect that one among my circle has plotted to take what is not theirs. If such a theft were to succeed, the consequences would not merely be personal, but broader. For some knowledge, once loosed upon the world, cannot be contained again." Hastings muttered softly, "Dash it all, sounds like the stuff of ghost stories. Do you mean to say someone here wants to nick a book? Surely that can't be reason enough to talk of murder." Harwood's eyes hardened, his hand tightening upon the chair's arm. "You misunderstand, Captain. These are not simple books. They are records of secrets men have killed to hide, formulas once thought to summon powers beyond human understanding, treatises of poisons and mind. To hold such a book is to hold the lives of others in your hand. And some here," his gaze flickered around the table, "would gladly kill for such a thing." With that, the gathering dissolved into uneasy groups. Hastings lingered close to Poirot, watching as Lady Evelyn drifted toward a corner, whispering to a tall man Hastings did not recognize. Sir Reginald stood stiffly by the fire, his hands clasped behind his back, as though he were presiding over some unseen trial. Professor Vale hovered near a shelf of Latin manuscripts, his eyes darting nervously as though expecting to be accused at any moment. Poirot, meanwhile, walked slowly along the central aisle of the library, his gaze sweeping over the rows of volumes. He reached out once, delicately, to touch the spine of a book bound in cracked red leather, its title faded into near invisibility. He drew back his hand almost immediately, as though sensing its weight was more than mere paper. "Poirot," Hastings whispered, joining him, "what do you make of all this? Harwood's talk of cursed books, and thieves, and murder. It sounds like balderdash to me. Though I admit, the whole place gives me the shivers." Poirot smiled faintly. "It is not for Hercule Poirot to decide whether books carry curses, mon ami. But men carry desires, ambitions, secrets, and these, I assure you, can kill as surely as any curse. Tell me, Hastings, observe them. Do you not see it? Each of them hides something. The judge with his severity, the professor with his trembling hands, the lady with her veil. All concealment, all performance. The theater of the guilty, perhaps. We must only wait for the curtain to rise." As the night deepened, Poirot began his quiet observations. He engaged Lady Evelyn first, speaking softly, coaxing her with polite questions that revealed fragments of her troubled history. A fortune once squandered by a reckless husband, recovered through investments whispered to be less than legal, rumors of debts unpaid, enemies left behind. She spoke with the poise of one accustomed to scandal. Yet beneath her careful words, Poirot noted the flicker of nerves when Harwood's name was mentioned. Then Professor Vale, who insisted repeatedly upon his innocence, yet betrayed himself with every tremor of his hands. His obsession with manuscripts was evident, his voice trembling with passion as he described the rare codices he had glimpsed upon Harwood's shelves. "Do you understand, Monsieur Poirot?" he whispered, eyes wide with fervor. "Some of these books, there is no record of them existing anywhere else. A scholar might devote his life to them. But I would not steal, I would not." He stopped abruptly, as though the denial had sprung too quickly, too forcefully. Meanwhile, Sir Reginald remained aloof, responding to Poirot's inquiries with curt phrases that revealed little. Yet his eyes, sharp and unyielding, seemed to judge not only the detective but every guest present. Hastings leaned in at one point and muttered, "He looks like he's ready to hang the lot of them without trial." Poirot only nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps, mon ami, because he knows what it is to condemn, and perhaps because he fears being condemned himself. It was near midnight when the first disturbance came. A scream, sharp, sudden, echoed from the far corner of the library, startling every guest to their feet. The sound had come from Lady Evelyn, who stood trembling before an open shelf. At her feet lay a book, thick, bound in blackened leather, its pages torn as if ripped hastily. Her hand shook violently as she pointed toward the shadows beyond the shelf. "Someone was there," she cried, "watching me. I swear it." Guests hurried to her side, murmuring in alarm, but when the shadows were searched, no one was found. Only the endless rows of books stared back. Poirot bent to examine the fallen volume, his gloved hands brushing over the torn edges. His eyes narrowed. "It is curious," he murmured. "This book has been removed not with care, but with desperation. And look, Hastings, the shelf behind, it bears the mark of dust disturbed. Someone has been searching here." Hastings bent closer. "But what could they be after? Surely there are hundreds of volumes like this." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Ah, but non, mon ami. To the untrained eye, all books are alike. But to the one who seeks a particular knowledge, only one will do." He rose, his eyes sweeping across the assembled guests, each now whispering in fear, suspicion curling like smoke in the air. "It begins," Poirot said softly. "The thief grows bold. And soon, I think, the first act of our tragedy will be upon us." Chapter 3. The Shadows of the Stacks. The Black Library was no ordinary archive, and Poirot sensed it from the moment his shoes clicked against the marble floor. Dust hung in the air like a veil, disturbed only by the faint drafts that whispered through narrow gaps in the tall, stained-glass windows. The ceiling rose into Gothic arches, where dim chandeliers cast shadows that moved strangely, as if the very shelves leaned forward to listen. In this cavernous room, silence was not peaceful, it was suffocating. Every creak, every breath, every faint rustle of old pages seemed to echo with a weight that belonged to something more than books. Inspector Grant followed at Poirot's side, his eyes darting across the rows of shelves. "It feels wrong, doesn't it?" he muttered, his voice nearly swallowed by the oppressive quiet. Poirot's lips curled slightly, though not in amusement. Libraries, mon ami, are usually sanctuaries of knowledge, places of refuge for the mind. But here it feels as though the knowledge is not stored. It is imprisoned, and something resents our intrusion. The caretaker, Mr. Ashcroft, appeared in the doorway, his lantern's flicker casting his gaunt features into sharper relief. He beckoned them further, leading them deeper into the labyrinth of shelves that wound like a maze. Each corridor seemed to narrow, the air growing colder, the silence heavier. Poirot took in every detail, the spines of books embossed with strange sigils, the faint scent of mildew mingling with something more metallic, and the dust, disturbed, as if hands had passed through here recently despite Ashcroft's claim of decades of abandonment. As they passed an alcove, Poirot paused. A single chair sat tucked beneath a reading desk, a thin layer of dust coating its surface except for the armrests, which bore smudges where hands had recently rested. He ran a gloved finger over it, frowning. "You see, Inspector," he murmured, "someone comes here often. More often than we are led to believe." Grant's brow furrowed. But Ashcroft swore. Poirot cut him off gently. "People swear many things, my friend, and yet dust does not lie." They reached a locked cabinet, its glass panels clouded with age. Behind it sat volumes bound in cracked leather, their titles half effaced by time. Ashcroft hesitated, clutching the key tightly before sliding it into the lock. The creak that followed was long and low, a sound that made even Grant flinch. Poirot leaned forward, studying the spines. Names jumped out to him, not of authors but of families. Old families, many connected by history, influence, or scandal. And there, amidst them, the Harrow name. A ledger-like book, its title burned into the cover. Harrow Estate. Ledgers and Holdings. Poirot tapped the spine gently. "Curious," he whispered. "Why would private financial records of a family be housed here, among such eclectic company?" Ashcroft's face drained of color, his lantern trembling in his hand. "That book should not be here," he muttered. "No family records are supposed to." His voice trailed, his eyes shifting nervously as though the shelves themselves were listening. Before Poirot could press him further, a sudden crash reverberated from deep within the stacks. Books tumbled from a high shelf, scattering across the floor like a burst of frightened birds. Grant spun around, hand instinctively going to his revolver. "Who's there?" he shouted. His voice carried down the aisles, swallowed quickly by the silence that followed. Poirot crouched, lifting one of the fallen books. Its cover bore no title, but when he opened it, symbols scrawled across the pages leapt at him. Strange, angular markings, not unlike ciphers he had once encountered in wartime. But these were darker, more intricate, as though intended less to be read than to be invoked. He closed it sharply, his mustache twitching. There is more here than finance or history. This library, it keeps secrets that are not meant for casual eyes. The lantern flickered, casting shadows that seemed to shift independently of their source. Ashcroft's breathing grew shallow. "We should leave," he rasped. "It isn't safe here after nightfall." Poirot studied him closely, noting the tremor in his hands, the way his eyes darted into the corners of the stacks. "Tell me, monsieur," Poirot asked softly, "do you fear the books, or what lingers among them?" Ashcroft did not answer. Instead, he turned abruptly, guiding them back toward the hall. But as they walked, Poirot could not shake the sensation that unseen eyes followed their every step, peering through the gaps in the shelves, waiting with a patience that felt almost inhuman. As they emerged into the pale light of the entrance hall, Poirot turned once more to look back. The shadows seemed deeper now, more pronounced, and in their shifting forms he could almost swear he saw the outline of a figure, tall, motionless, and watching. He blinked, and it was gone. Poirot folded his hands behind his back, his expression unreadable. "This is not merely a case of stolen artifacts," he murmured to Grant. "This is a matter of power, power hidden, power protected, and power, my friend, always leaves a trail." Chapter 4. The Last Enigma. The dawn was pale and uncertain as Hercule Poirot and Inspector Japp stood before the towering iron gates of the Black Library. For weeks, shadows had cloaked this mystery, and death had followed in its wake. Now, as the heavy doors groaned open, the final act of the drama was about to unfold. The grand chamber inside the library stretched like a cathedral of secrets. Rows upon rows of tomes rose into the dark heights, ladders leaning like sentinels against forgotten shelves. And at the center, on a marble table carved with strange emblems, lay the ancient volume that had drawn so many to ruin. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Mon ami," he whispered to Japp, "here lies the heart of the matter." But before either man could step forward, the quiet was broken. From the shadows emerged Lord Ravenscroft, his face pale, his eyes carrying the weariness of sleepless nights. He looked not triumphant, but broken, as though the library itself had consumed him. "You cannot understand," he muttered. "The book does not belong to any man. It speaks, it commands." His trembling hand pointed toward the volume as though it were alive. Poirot advanced, his shoes echoing softly. "Non, monsieur," he said gently. "It does not speak. It is your own conscience, twisted by ambition. The book is nothing more than words, dangerous only because you gave it power. You killed to protect it, and yet it has destroyed you." Ravenscroft's composure shattered. He fell to his knees, confessing in broken sentences how he had orchestrated every event. The poisoned glass, the locked doors, the staged illusions of supernatural curses. His greed for the library's secrets had driven him beyond reason. Each crime, each elaborate deception, was but another step to ensure that no one else would uncover what he believed to be his treasure alone. Japp moved quickly to restrain him, but Poirot did not gloat. Instead, he stood solemn, watching the broken figure of a man undone not by fate, but by his own obsession. The Black Library had claimed another victim, not through mysticism, but through the darker labyrinths of the human heart. As dawn's first full light poured through the stained glass, Poirot turned, his gaze fixed on the ancient shelves. "It is curious, is it not, Japp? The mysteries men create are often more dangerous than those that already exist. A locked room, a poisoned drink, an elaborate lie. All these are but devices. But greed and fear, those are the true murderers." The case was closed, yet the air inside the Black Library seemed unchanged, heavy with silence, heavy with secrets. Poirot tipped his hat, his little gray cells satisfied, yet humbled by the eternal enigma of human nature. And so, the Black Library returned to shadow, its books untouched, its halls silent once more. But one truth remained eternal, that no matter how carefully hidden, no crime could escape the light of Hercule Poirot's mind. If you enjoyed unraveling the Black Library, a Hercule Poirot mystery, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with fellow mystery lovers. More cases await, each darker and more twisted than the last, and you won't want to miss them.